How many of you are looking for a streaming option at the quarterback position this week? Michael Penix is done for the season. CJ Stroud won't be back this week. Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, and Tua are all on a bye. And Rodgers and Dart are still questionable at this point in time. So let's dive into the quarterback position today and see who might be out there that you can run with as a streaming option. And Thursday Night Football with Buffalo and Houston, obviously we're going to start Josh Allen, but are we ready to risk it on Thursday night with Davis Mills? I don't care that Houston allows the fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Josh Allen is coming off of 6 total touchdowns last week. If you own Josh Allen, you're absolutely playing him. But one of the toughest decisions that I had to make in this video was Davis Mills. Do we stream him or do we leave him on the bench? He's been the QB1 and the QB9 the last couple of weeks, so clearly he is a guy who has produced and deserves at least a look for your fantasy lineups. But it comes down to a couple of things for me as to why I'm going to list him as a sit. Number one, it's the matchup. Buffalo allows the 5th fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So it is a tough matchup, and it's a lot tougher than what he has faced over the last couple of weeks. Number two, though, is the fact that it's Thursday Night Football. And on Thursday night, things don't always go the way that we would like. I guess you can say that about this entire season. But if you were to try and stream Davis Mills on Thursday Night Football and he doesn't do anything for you, you're going to spend the next several days and the rest of the week kicking yourself in the butt for rolling with Davis Mills. If Davis Mills plays well and he has another top 12 week, you're probably not going to be kicking yourself because you have another option that is just as comparable. And we've got some guys this week that have solid matchups. So you know what? I'm going to risk it with somebody with a better matchup this week instead of trying to roll with Davis Mills on Thursday night. For Pittsburgh and Chicago, Aaron Rodgers is going to be questionable, and it sounds like he's going to try and return to practice on Friday to see if he can play with that fracture in his wrist. We won't know more about Aaron Rodgers until later in the week, so as of right now, I'm just going to list him as questionable. If he were to play, it's a good matchup. Chicago allows the 6th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. They caused some turnovers of J.J. McCarthy last week, but Aaron Rodgers, I don't expect to turn over the ball nearly as much. Now, if Mason Rudolph were to play, I'm sorry, I can't do it with Mason Rudolph either. If Aaron Rodgers plays, he'll be a fringe start for me just because we don't know exactly how healthy he is. If he was 100%, he would be a start in this matchup, but he'll be a fringe because of his health. For Mason Rudolph, if you're out there playing Mason Rudolph, please leave me a comment down below and let me know so I can make sure that we say a little prayer to the fantasy gods for you this week. I'll admit, Caleb Williams probably deserves to be listed as a start here and not a fringe start, but I can't put him in green for one very specific reason. Are we getting the defense that for a majority of the season has allowed the 10th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks? Or are we getting the defense that last week held Joe Flacco and the Cincinnati Bengals in check after getting destroyed by them just a few weeks ago? That's the big question mark here. Caleb Williams last week was inside the top 20 at the quarterback position. We did not see the upside from the previous couple of games before that, which makes sense. It was the Minnesota Vikings on the road. It's a tough defense, but I don't know who we're going to get from Pittsburgh this week. So if Caleb Williams was going to be a guy that you just automatically inserted into your lineup, I get it. But I would expect maybe a little bit of a lower ceiling this week if Pittsburgh shows up to play. New England at Cincinnati, great matchup for Drake May. He's going up against a defense allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. And right now, Drake May is firmly inside the conversation for MVP this season. Joe Flacco may be a little bit closer to being a fringe start than an actual start this week. And the reason for that is no Ja'Marr Chase. That's a big difference to any offense when you lose a player like this. And this matchup is definitely a lot tougher than what he faced last week with Pittsburgh when they really couldn't get anything going. But at this point in the season, with how well Joe Flacco has played, you have to list him as a start because he has had high upside every single week prior to last week. And if that's just a blip on the radar, he's got an opportunity even without Chase to be inside the top 12 this week. It sounds like the New York Giants anticipate Jackson Dart clearing the concussion protocol, but as of this recording, he has not as of yet. And of course, in the NFL, anything can change, and maybe the Giants are just trying to throw a little smoke up there for the Detroit Lions and how they're preparing for the week. But for Jackson Dart, if he does play, he's absolutely a start. If Jameis Winston is the starting quarterback, then he is only a fringe start. Two big reasons why. Number one, turnover potential with Jameis Winston is a lot higher than Jackson Dart. And number two, Jackson Dart is going to run the football and pick up yards on the ground more often than Jameis Winston will. Jared Goff did not look great on the road in Philadelphia last week, but now he gets a chance to come back home and face a defense that's allowing the second most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Back in week 1, when Detroit couldn't get things going on the road against Green Bay, they came home the next week and hung 50 on the Chicago Bears. Not a great matchup for J.J. McCarthy, going up against Green Bay, who allows the 8th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. But it's really odd because J.J. McCarthy apparently plays a lot better on the road than he does at home. In each of his road starts this season, he has at least 2 passing touchdowns. In his home starts this season, he only has 1 passing touchdown in each of those games. It's the turnovers. Over the last 3 games, he has 5 interceptions. 4 have come in the last 2 games. Take care of the ball, JJ. If you do that, your team has a real shot at winning this game. Jordan Love does not have the ceiling of a top 12 quarterback for me this week. Minnesota's defense is very solid, and even though Jordan Love was good last week, the couple of weeks prior to that, he was really on that fringe QB status anyway. Going up against Minnesota and the fact that he was banged up last week, even though he did return, limits his upside for me. For as hot as Sam Darnold was at one point in time, he really has cooled off here as of recent. He had 4 interceptions last week, which now means he has an interception in each of his last 4 games. He also has 7 total interceptions during that span, and he's been the QB 23 or lower in 2 of his last 4 games. He has top 12 potential this week going up against Tennessee, but it's the turnovers that are a big question mark right now. If he takes care of the football going up against Tennessee, he should be just fine, and he's got top 12 potential. But if he turns the ball over again, that's when we're going to see some points start to slip away and him start to slip outside the top 12. Last week, Cam Ward had his best finish in fantasy football of the season. And the best part about it is he now has 0 interceptions in back-to-back games after 6 straight games with an interception. Cam Ward might be growing a little bit, which is good for Tennessee fans, but it's not enough yet for our fantasy lineup. This is a tough matchup for Daniel Jones, and I know Indianapolis fans have a ton of confidence going into this game, and you should. Your team has played great this season, but this game and the X factor for this game is all about Daniel Jones. Kansas City's defense has done really good against opposing quarterbacks this season. Right now, they're allowing the 10th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Daniel Jones, over his last 2 games, has 4 interceptions. Hopefully coming out of the bye, he's cleaned that up a little bit. But Kansas City has done a great job of limiting touchdowns. Over the last couple of starts going up against Josh Allen and Bo Nix, they only allowed 1 passing touchdown. And so far on the season, they've only allowed 9 total passing touchdowns. After 5 straight games finishing inside the top 5 quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes has been outside the top 12 in each of the last 2 games. Even in a tougher matchup last week against Denver, he still finished as the QB 13. We've seen a ton of upside from him this season, and given this matchup with Indianapolis could go either way depending on how good Sauce Gardner plays and how well he is adjusted to the defense coming out of the bye, Patrick Mahomes could be right around that QB 12 mark. Or he could light things up and he could be up towards the top 5 once again. Justin Fields headed to the bench. Tyrod Taylor, they're going to give him a second shot to try and start. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt in practice this week, and then they got to go back to Justin Fields again because Justin Fields at this point has to be about finished in New York. But Baltimore's defense has been playing a lot better as of late. They've gotten a little bit healthier, and because they've been limiting opposing offenses, this is not the week to try and get crazy and start Tyrod Taylor, so I'm going to skip out on him. Was it the weather last week? Was it the defense? Was Lamar Jackson just not prepared? I have no idea. Last week was not great. He had more interceptions last week than he's had combined for the entire season so far. But we're going to put him right back as a start this week. Tons of upside as always, and hopefully he's just a little bit more crisp than what we saw. Shedeur Sanders is going to get the start this week as Dillon Gabriel will remain in the concussion protocol. And I get that it is a solid matchup going up against Las Vegas, but if you truly are going to start Shedeur Sanders this week, please let me know in the comments why. And no, you can't tell me it's just because of Las Vegas. I want a good, detailed description and argument for why we should be starting Shedeur Sanders this week. Last week, against one of the worst defenses in all of football so far this season, Geno Smith completed 27 of 42 passes for 238 yards, only had one touchdown, and also threw an interception. I get Dallas is improved. I get Dallas is healthier now, but it doesn't really matter in my opinion. If you can't find any upside in a matchup like that where you're a negative game script the entire time and you drop back on 90% of your plays in the first quarter, then going up against a defense allowing the third fewest fantasy points per game, you're not going to find any upside either. For Jacksonville and Arizona, I am not chasing rushing touchdowns with Trevor Lawrence. And if you want him as a top 12 quarterback, that's essentially what you need from him. Every single time, except once this season, that he has finished as a top 12 quarterback, it's because he has added a rushing touchdown. And a lot of these aren't even designed runs. But in the games where he doesn't have a rushing touchdown, which is 7 games, he has finished outside the top 12 quarterbacks. Believe it or not, Arizona has allowed the 7th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Their defense has been solid at times this season, whether it's because they're actually limiting the pass or they're just being ran against or whatever it may end up being. So far this season, quarterbacks have not had a ton of success, and I'm not going to chase that success with Lawrence. Jacksonville is allowing the 5th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. So Jacoby Brissett, who has been a QB1 in 5 straight games, believe it or not, will be a start for us absolutely once again this week. Jalen Hurts versus Dak Prescott could end up being a ton of fun this week. Jalen Hurts had limited upside last week against the Detroit Lions. Now he's getting a Dallas defense that, again, is much improved, but has still been pretty bad against quarterbacks all season long. What are we going to get from Jalen Hurts this week? Whatever it is, he's going to be a start for us. Dak Prescott, this Philadelphia defense got after Jared Goff last week. Can it get after Dak this week? If it does, maybe it causes a little bit of a lower ceiling. But these Philadelphia and Dallas games always seem to be entertaining. And for their first matchup this season, it wouldn't shock me if it follows suit. Kirk Cousins is back as the starter for the Atlanta Falcons. And now Michael Penix is likely to miss up to 9 months as he's dealing with an ACL tear again, his 3rd one in his career since college. That's extremely tough for him. And I hope that he can come back, and I hope that he is healthy. Kirk Cousins in his limited action this year has not looked good. And at the end of last season, he didn't look good either. So I really don't know what we're going to get from him right now. Going up against New Orleans this week, maybe we get a quarterback that's rejuvenated. Maybe we get a quarterback that says, hey, we're moving forward now. I'm not going to play nearly as tight as I did last year, and everything's going to be fine because I don't have someone looking over my shoulder. I don't know what we're going to get from Kirk Cousins. So right now, we're going to list him as a sit. But if he can come out and perform well this week, then maybe we do have an option to stream the rest of the season. The one unfortunate thing for Kirk Cousins now that he's taking over as the starter, he's going to have to put the golf clubs away. And I'm pretty sure that he just put in a large order with Caddy Splash because he watches our videos, I think, and he's probably heard so far this season how Caddy Splash is one of the best companies for those golfers out there that love to take care of their golf clubs. Sorry, Kirk, you're not going to be able to use your Caddy Splash equipment anytime soon, but our viewers still can. Head on over to Caddy Splash and see all of the great tools that they have that make you look like a great golfer, even if your swing isn't that one of a great golfer. And for all of our viewers right now, if you put an order in at Caddy Splash and use code Headliners, you're going to get 15% off of your order. So check them out. Absolutely love them. They're a staple in my golf bag because, once again, I don't want people making fun of me for how badly I play and for how badly my clubs look. Tyler Shuck had a great game right before the bye, but I don't know what Atlanta defense we're going to get this week. If we get the Atlanta defense that shut down the Buffalo Bills back towards the beginning of the season, if I tell you that Tyler Shuck is a fringe start and you try to roll with him, streaming him, you're going to absolutely hate it. But if for some reason Atlanta's defense doesn't show up again this week, Tyler Shuck has a decent opportunity to at least be a QB2. He would be a guy that I'd be looking more at in like a super flex league, but not in a 1-quarterback league. Baker Mayfield and Matthew Stafford could be one of the best matchups that we see all week between quarterbacks. They're a little bit on the different ends of spectrums, though, when it comes to how tough this matchup is, because Baker Mayfield going up against the Rams, who allow the 6th fewest fantasy points per game, is a little bit tougher than Matthew Stafford going up against Tampa Bay, who allow the 8th most fantasy points per game. And since the bye, Baker Mayfield has been the QB7 and the QB6. He lost a little bit of upside there right in the middle of the season, but since the bye, he's looking a whole lot better. His ceiling could be limited this week against LA, but he's still going to be a start. For Stafford, he's getting a defense that just got torn apart by Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, so he's obviously got a ton of upside this week. He has not thrown an interception since week 3, and he has at least 2 touchdown passes in each of his last 3 games. Will Bryce Young duplicate what he did last week? No, there's no way he does it again. But based on how this season has gone, it wouldn't shock me either. But it's a solid matchup against San Francisco. They're currently allowing the 9th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. And maybe Bryce Young is going to have another late season run where he looks like a competent quarterback, because he did the same thing last year. Was up and down all year, even got replaced at one point in time, and then over the last few games of the season was a top 12 quarterback. I don't know if we're going to get that this season, but this isn't a bad matchup. And for those of you looking to stream somebody, this would be the type of matchup I would be looking at. Carolina is allowing the 9th fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks, but Brock Purdy is back at a perfect time for those of you that need a quarterback. If he's still available in your leagues, he should be picked up and owned at this point. If you've been holding on to him, great. You know what you could possibly do? If you've got 2 quarterbacks in a 1 quarterback league and there's people out there dealing with no quarterbacks, maybe you can make a trade now that Brock Purdy's back. Headliner Nation, hopefully this has helped you out. The quarterback position is going to be a little tough to read this week, and hopefully you're in a position where you don't even really need a whole lot of information from this video. But if you do need a ton of information and you're staring a tough week right in the eye, best of luck to you, and hopefully this video helped you out. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, bell notifications, hype the video, whatever it may be. We appreciate all of the interactions. But more importantly, stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.